Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Well, season's greetings and good morning, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. And yes, we're going on a little early today because the very rare weekday matinee today, Jets and Leafs at 1 o'clock p.m. So we're going to get going and then get out of here for a little R&R for Christmas holidays. Looking forward to it. But we will have a fun show today. Mike McIntyre is going to jump on, and Nick Alberga as well to help set up Leafs and Jets. We'll touch on a little bit of a big weekend in the National Football League as well, and get out a little early so we can get in place for a big game tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, between the Jets and the Leafs. Early Christmas present for Jet fans and the WST crew on Saturday with a 5-0 thumping of the Minnesota Wild. Great time was had by all. Thanks to everyone that joined us. We'll talk about that in just a minute when Michael Remis joins us. And then, of course, I do want to mention right off the bat that while we will be off of our regular live programming, we do have a little Christmas gift for you all, which will premiere tomorrow at our normal time of 1 p.m. A holiday special with Bones, Bayak, and Brent Fitz, caught up with three of our favorites on Winnipeg Sports Talk over the last couple days, and to put that together for you for a little bit of holiday listening when you need a bit of a break from the family and all the other craziness. WST will be there for a fun holiday chat with Dennis Bayak, as I mentioned, Rick Bonus, and a really fun convo with Brent Fitz that I think you're going to love. So that is tomorrow, December 24th, 1 o'clock p.m. You can enjoy that over the 3 days, and then we will be back on Friday with our regular live show, 1 p.m., the final marble race of the year, getting ready for the Ottawa Senators to come to town on Saturday night. Sens have been playing some good hockey as of late. But listen, as we get into this, it'll be a bit of an abbreviated show today. We won't go the full 2 hours, but we certainly do want to pass on our best in both thanks and holiday wishes to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Our friends at Princess Auto, Coolbet Canada, Rollies Transfer, Manitoba Battery, Consolidated Supply, fansfirst.ca. Of course, the Hockey Canada Ultimate 50-50 draw, which is on right now. First draw is on December 26th. There's a link in the description. Get those tickets. All the money stays here in Manitoba to help grassroots hockey initiatives here in the province. Of course, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, the Winnipeg Jets, Little Brown Jug, Royal Sports, and Boston Pizza, which might be our gathering place this afternoon to watch the Jets and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Welcome to everybody in chat. Great to see that people both remembered that we were on this early today and have joined us. Shout out to everyone, especially T. Will, who's chilling in Orlando watching the game to us. It's pretty nice out here right now, I will say that, T. Will. And let's get Remis in here and get this show on the road. Remo, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I was recording stuff earlier and I had myself muted, but great to be here. Had a great time Saturday. So much fun. So happy to be here.
Oh, man, you guys missed some good stuff there from Remis right out of the gate.
I was saying it was so awesome to see everyone. And, I'm on a high from that win on Saturday. It was great. We had so many people out who bought our ticket package and were there for the game saying hello. But we also saw the Jets win 5-0 over the Wild. And you were telling everyone on the concourse, Jake Middleton, the only player on Minnesota to score against the Jets this year. Truly incredible. It truly was season's beatings.
I love that stat. I just love that stat. I was hoping all night that, obviously, first and foremost for Connor Hellebuck. By the way, check out the new shirt, folks. Look at that. Shout out to the artist, whoever made that up. If they could just hold it down Middleton would be the only guy. I mean, the Jets gave up 2 goals in 3 games to the Wild this year. There was the 2-1 OT win early on the season at home, like game 3 of the season. There was the 4-1 win in Minnesota. Middleton had the goals in both games, and then they got nothing. So it was awesome. Full green light for the Wave in the final few minutes of the game with a 5-0 score. And what an awesome atmosphere at that game, Remo. And, we obviously got there early to hook up with the WST crew, and I was impressed. There was a lot of Wild fans around. I mean, this wasn't like a Leaf game or a Hab game or Boston or something like that, but you could tell there was a lot of Minnesota fans that had made the trip up for the weekend to take in the game. They obviously didn't enjoy themselves, I think, like the rest of the home fans did. But, they had all those holiday giveaways going on, and the bottom line was you could really feel the energy in the air and the excitement of fans to get together for what's always a fun game, the final one before Christmas. And, man, did the team come up and take care of business. I mean, this was as complete a game as I think we've seen in a little while from the Winnipeg Jets. Now, again, much like I said last week when the Jets didn't play particularly well against the Sharks or the Ducks, I'm not going to make any broad stroke statements that has any effect on the playoffs. I'm not sure that the 5-0 win over the Wild at this point is going to, but the job right now is to get wins and to secure yourself in the playoff picture, and the Jets have done exactly that. And Reem, we look at the standings right now as we get to Christmas. The Jets will be the number 1 team in the Central Division at Christmas. They could very well be the number 1 team in the National Hockey League if they do win tonight. Now, the Vegas does have the Jets slightly by points percentage because they're 2 points back with 3 games in hand. The Washington Capitals are 1 point back with 2 games. Or sorry, the Golden Knights they're 2 back with 2 games in hand. Washington's 1 back with 2 games in hand. But as far as the Central Division goes, it was a big win on Saturday night because the Jets now have a 5-point cushion on the Minnesota Wild with 1 game in hand. The Jets have 7 points on the Avalanche, and the Jets have a game in hand. And the Dallas Stars have been struggling. They've lost their last couple games. They're 11 points back from Winnipeg, albeit having 3 games in hand. So the fact that the Jets have played more games, I don't think having less on the schedule after Christmas will be a bad thing. But it's about getting wins right now. It's about getting points, and nobody does it better than Connor Hellebuck right now. League-leading shutouts, wins, and, of course, the Winnipeg Jets with 24 wins in 35 games. Pretty awesome first stretch of the season as we get into one more today against the Leafs.
Yeah, super fired up. I see Tony Ambrosio tweeting, no Austin Matthews tonight for the Leafs. And Joseph Woll in net after Stolars was injured. As far as Jets lineup, Ehlers and Lowry, maintenance days yesterday. Lowry left Saturday's game with an undisclosed injury. They said he's fine, and Ehlers just maintenance after coming back from his injury and looked a lot better, Huss, on Saturday than his first game back against Anaheim. And it was funny, we had the conversation with Jesse Pierce, who covers the Wild for NHL.com, Bar Down Beauties podcast on Friday, and she kept saying, the Wild, when you asked her, what did they want for Christmas? She wanted a defensive zone face-off win. And that was really hard for them to come by, especially on the penalty kill, because the Jets on the first power play scored 6 seconds in with Nikolai Ehlers. A really nice play, maybe faking that he was going to pass to Velarde in front, but just slammed it home past Wallstedt. And Neil Pionk, when power play 2 got an opportunity, scored 14 seconds in to make it 2-0. And that was really all they needed. Connor Hellebuck was great. Everyone was getting in on the action. Morgan Barron scored a goal, Huss, this time with a goalie in the net, although it was pretty wide. It's pretty wide open cage. Mike McIntyre nicely pointed out to him after the game that he hadn't scored with pass shooting.
He appreciated that, I'm sure.
Yeah, Mike McIntyre pointing out that he hadn't technically beaten a goalie for either of his goals. But again, great night. It was the holiday game at the Canada Life Center, and the production team does such an amazing job with all the graphics on the screen. around the ad ring, around the arena, giving away fire trucks to kids at intermission. You got Santas in the crowd. I got a Tootsie Roll from Coach Keezer, who's in the chat. So it was a very festive atmosphere. A lot of fun. Yeah, it's your boy Bruce from the chat was there wearing like lights around his neck. People were dressed up. It was fun. Good time on a Saturday.
Gitch had the Grinch costume with the Rat Hartman name band. Yeah, pull the picture up. Now, this obviously wasn't the entire crew, just the people that we grabbed right after the game. But, yeah, if WST night ends in a victory, just join us at the big TVs out of the section. There will usually be a group photo of happy Jet fans, and they certainly were that on Saturday night.
Here's, the picture. Yeah, he's got the Grinch costume and had Rat Hartman on the name bar on the back. There were a couple Grinches out there that got on the Jumbotron. I did like they usually do the look-alike where you look like a celebrity. They had look like Mrs. Claus and Santa Claus. Very fun. Everyone was certainly getting into it.
This is a great photo. Kabilis on the left. There's Steph. There's Reem. It's your boy Bruce, myself, beer guy Brett, the best beer guy in the business. He's a season ticket holder for the Jets, but you can see him slinging cold ones at the Goldeye game when it hit his buddies. A very rare picture of Sheriff Gregory Liverpool not wearing his black cowboy hat. Mike Wynn, and there's Kim. We got to give a special shout out to Kim, who joins us, came in from Montreal for the holidays and made sure she joined the game and the crew for the game. It was very nice to meet Kim and her brother there. So anyways, a great time had by all. And I will give another shout out to regular, loyal WST listener and a guy that's helped us out quite a bit, Brian Aiken. Bravo, Bri. I did get a chance to stop in. I brought the Grinch to the Pony later on that night. We got a chance to see some of the musical stylings of his band Dad Bod, which was an absolute riot. So, yeah, definitely finishing 2023 strong, or 2024 strong, with one of the more fun home games of the year and one of the more fun evenings of the year. And Remo, man, remember last year after we did the first 3 games of our package and we were thinking that Calgary game was going to be a referendum as to whether we could even continue to get our group together because we were 0-3.
Yes, man.
That seems like ancient history now.
We were so nervous last year, when we went 0-3. We were at that LA game where Velarde got hurt. We were at the Toronto game where they struggled to score. I forget the third game, but this year, the Jets are playing well, and you look at their home record. Odds are if you're going to a game at Canada Life Center this year, you're going to see a win because they're 12-3-1 at home. We've been to 3 of those games now. And, hey, don't forget the watch party. We had a Boston Pizza against Detroit. There was a win. And not only was there a win, they put up 6 goals. So a lot of people were winning free stuff the entire night. So it's going well for the Jets. Plus 41 goal differential. Far and away best in the West. So a great time. Again, great time Saturday will be, when's the next one? January, right?
January 16th. Excuse me. January 16th, Seattle Kraken. Go to winnipegjets.com/WST. Maybe you do that last minute Christmas gifts for somebody. Jump on it with us. Thursday night game. And then our final 2 are Fridays, which will be fun. Islanders on February 7th. And the Devils on March 28th. So, get on over there. winnipegjets.com/WST. I think the Kraken game will be the least expensive of the year. I'm pretty sure that's one of their C games, as it were. It was an A game on the weekend, so it would be good. Oh, I see Gregory's in the chat. Hey, I was getting ready to leave, Hustler. I didn't know we were going to do a group photo. Tell me in advance, Hustler. Sorry, Greg.
He was wearing the cowboy hat earlier in the night.
Yeah, you were heading around. And there's Kim Sawchuk. Try my best to time my visits to hang out with y'all. It was a riot. Kim, thanks so much for the beer, and it was great to meet you and your brother. So listen, Jets took care of business pretty darn well. Again, Wild coming off a game the night before. They've sort of hit their skid right now. They've lost 4 in a row, and I think 5 of their last 7. So, and And listen, they were without Gustafsson and Eriksson Ek. But all you can do is play the way that play the way that you want to play, and certainly get a better start. And although the shots weren't there in abundance early on, the Jets came out well, and Scott Arniel talked about it afterwards. Remis, just every line going out there for the first time, getting off to a good start. They certainly did that, and this one was never really in doubt from the first period, but. You mentioned the power play, and I'm not sure we've spent enough time talking about this, but if there's one guy that deserves a big fat present under the tree on Wednesday, it's Davis Payne. And I know we spent a lot of time talking about O'Neill, but I think the entire coaching staff deserves a lot of credit, none more than in the special teams category. As we go into today's game, the Jets are the only team in the National Hockey League with a power play efficiency of greater than 30%, and they're pushing 32, 31.8%. New Jersey's next at 29.5, and the Panthers are third at 27.3. The difference that alone has made in their season, in the wins, in the standings, I'm not sure we can really quantify it, but And we talk so much about, things that translate to the playoffs. Good teams with good special teams give themselves a much better chance to win. And to me, I don't know. I mean, obviously you focus in on 5-5 and what's happening, on a game-by-game basis, shift by shift, all that. The emergence of the Jets' power play is the best in the league, and we're approaching halfway through the season. I mean, this isn't just a nice little hot streak. Has to give you a lot of excitement if you're a Jet fan heading into 2025, because they have just simply been impossible to stop, and no one's been better with the man advantage through 35 games.
Yeah, don't forget the penalty kill as well, going 5 for 5 on Saturday. Ken writing in the Free Press, the Jets have scored at least one power play goal in 23 games, which seems crazy, and they've scored twice with the man advantage 8 times this season. And the power play, 11 for 28 in the last 7. And the Wild hitting a bit of a rough patch. And I know, Huss, we like to say it's the NHL. You got to be ready for every game. But the Jets were set up in a pretty nice spot, having played on that road trip against Anaheim, had a couple days off before, playing at home. Minnesota had played the night before at home against Utah. But in the last 6 games here, it's really not going well. For Minnesota, Jesse Pierce, who we had on the show Friday, giving some insight on the Wild, posting on X after the game. In the last 6 games, Minnesota had only scored 9 goals. That's including the shutout on Saturday, and allowed 24. So they're in a bit of a slump as well. We're in a bit of a slump. And, I was getting ready, Huss, to boo Ryan Hartman, Marcus Foligno. Were these guys even on the ice? Like,
did they play?
Like, did they play? Where were they? Kaprizov had one nice play, but a real no-show from Minnesota against a team for them they hadn't beaten this year, against a team they're chasing for first. So you thought if they were saving something on Friday to bring on Saturday, they really had nothing. I know they were missing a couple players. You mentioned Middleton, the only guy who had scored against the Jets this year for them. He was injured. Joel Eriksson Ek out, missing their goalie as well, Gustafsson. But still, we thought you'd see something, some emotion from these guys, and there was none. So
it was an absolute no-show from, because that's the one thing. I mean, listen, you might not have it going offensively, but you would still think that they would be a little bit more engaged. There was none of the BS that we're usually used to from Hartman in particular. Foligno was basically a non-factor. I mean, with the exception of Kaprizov, as you mentioned, with a couple chances in that game, and I mean, the guy's a world-class superstar in this in the league. Matt Boldy was noticeable a couple times, I guess, but for the most part, they just didn't have a lot. And listen, credit to the Jets for carrying the play. But it was sort of funny to see Ryan Hartman being such an afterthought. And I told you, after the game on Friday night, when they lost to Utah, I figured I would tune into the post game and just see how things were going in the Twin Cities, just purely for research standpoint, going into this game on Saturday. And Ryan Hartman was getting absolutely killed in the chat. They want him benched. They want him done. I'm sure that didn't help otherwise. I think I told you this, Reem, but I couldn't help myself from popping into their YouTube chat under Winnipeg Sports Talk and just saying it's very sad to see Ryan Hartman get dragged like this by the chat. He seems like such a nice guy.
Yeah, you told me that on Saturday. I had such a great laugh when you told me you went into some Minnesota. It was with Score North post game under Winnipeg Sports Talk. I'm like, oh no, what did you say? But that is the perfect comment. And Jay Miller noting in chat that yes, Ryan Hartman scoreless in 14. And if he's not scoring and he's not pissing off the other team, what's he really doing? What's he really doing out there? So I was surprised just how lifeless Minnesota seemed. The game, it was kind of like you like to see a nice beatdown. That game wasn't close. I was expecting two teams that don't like each other scoring chances, but it was a really dominant performance. As you mentioned, all the lines. I mean, power play 1 scoring quickly, power play 2 as well. Neil Pionk, and they had a nice moment for him for his 500th game as an undrafted player. I mean, that's pretty incredible accomplishment. So again, a great night, a great game. You look to move it forward against Toronto because the Jets have not beat the Leafs in 6 games since December 5, 2021, when Mark Scheifele said in the dressing room, videoed on the social media, is there anything better than beating the Leafs? And they just haven't experienced that great feeling since. So we'll see if they can build on that win heading into the break here.
Yeah, let's make some Christmas wishes come true tonight, or this afternoon, for Jet fans and the players. I mean, that would be, the team's already in first place. We've kind of gone through all the accolades of what they've accomplished so far. But to get win 25 before Christmas, to be the first team in the NHL to crack the 50-point barrier and to do it against the Toronto Maple Leafs, that would be the perfect way for the Winnipeg Jets to go into Christmas. So we'll see what we get this afternoon. As you mentioned, Woll's going to be getting the start. Stolarz is on the shelf right now, but no Austin Matthews. And that is, although, I mean, I would say that's a huge loss for the Leafs, which it is. We'll talk to Nick Alberga about this, but I mean, they've been very good playing without, without Matthews so far this season. And here's just the latest from Mitchell Clinton. NHL Jets head coach Scott Arniel says, we'll see in warm-up when it comes to the status of those who didn't skate yesterday, Adam Lowry and Nikolai Ehlers. And it will be, once again, Connor Hellebuck starting in goal as the Jets head into the break. We'll get into more of today's game in a minute when Mike and Nick come on with us. Let's just kind of wrap Saturday's game, though, with a little bit of Coach Arniel. It was a festive mood post-game in the Matt Frost Media Center after the Jets completed their sweep of the Minnesota Wild with a 5-0 shutout. And here's what Arnie had to say about Saturday night's 5-0 win.
Is that as complete as complete a game as you guys have maybe put together 60 minutes in quite some time?
I wouldn't say quite some time, but I would say that it's probably been one of our better efforts in the last couple of days here, last few games. That we knew that they were coming in after playing last night. Went after them in the first period, and kind of continued that throughout the 3 periods. Like a lot of our compete, sort of a lot of our details, a lot of good things that happened tonight.
All right, there's Scott Arniel, and maybe taking a little bit of umbrage with being quite some time, but everyone would agree. Best game in a while overall, start to finish, and certainly the score reflected that. Nikolai Ehlers scored 6 seconds into the power play. He was quite critical of his own game. Arnie said that he looked rusty in game number 1 back. A different story for 27 on Saturday. Here's the coach.
When you see his speed like that, when he puts it on display, it's nerve-wracking for the opposition, and especially the defenders that have to play that side of the ice. And he pushes people back, and that it just creates offensive zone time for that group. And I thought those 3 were, they did a really good job. Spent a lot of time down that end of the rink, and they got rewarded for it.
I think you've talked about that line line as a strength, even forechecking despite their size before it turns into a goal for them in that case
Yeah.
today. What did you see in that particular play with Perfetti's?
Yeah, that was one of the things we had harped on kind of prior to the game about our pressure. If you're going to go after a team that's tired, the pressure is the big part of it. It's taking away their time and space and getting after them. And that's exactly what the Fets got on them. Their pressure, they got down quickly, didn't allow Minnie to kind of make the next play and created the turnover and is in the back of the net. So that's kind of part of, those guys that when they do it, when they're moving like that, they can be very effective. The other side of things for me, I thought 4 lines were going tonight. I know I mentioned that to you guys. That'd probably be the thing for me. It's probably the first time in a while that we've had all 4 lines going one right after the other, and that was that continued momentum sort of shift to shift.
All right, so there's Scott Arniel on that. And while we're talking about Ehlers, we should mention Perfetti, who was one of the 3 stars for the game. Assisted on Pionk's second period power play goal, scored unassisted to really ice the game early in the third period, and then assisted on the 5th and final goal of the game by Vlad Nemetsnikov. And, Perfetti's a funny guy. Sometimes he'll be quiet for a few games, but when he starts feeling it like he did on Saturday, the points can come in bunches.
Yeah, and he really showed off that shot, which comes out once in a while. So he's a smart player. He can pass, and he definitely has it in him. But he's had a little bit of a slump, last season for sure, and quiet at times this year. But with Nikolai Ehlers back and showing the speed, and talked after how they knew that Minnesota had played the night before and they needed to get on them quick. Had a nice forecheck. So good-looking line has with Ehlers back, with Nemesnikov, Perfetti. Seemed to work out there for them on Saturday.
Just because Mike is coming on right now, I will use his terminology. This is Scott Arniel discussing the Millie-Vavili pairing who were together on Saturday night.
There's things that they're continuing to grow together. That's Villy being back on the left side. He'd been playing the right with Stan. So, just familiarity playing with Millsy. I think, just like you said, there's some good things that we'll look at and that they can build on. There's some other areas that they just got to continue to, improve. And, we don't stress them out too much in the sense of, getting them thinking all about the bad things. We want to continue to build on the positives. And, I think that just the growth there. I think Millsy helps, Villy in those situations. So there's lots of good going on. They got lots of minutes, which help too.
One other quick clip we'll play before we bring in Mike. David Gustafsson got back into the lineup, and it was great to see Gus back in, especially considering the circumstances that led him to leaving the lineup after spending the majority of the first half of the season in the press box. Here's Arnie on getting Gus back in.
Yeah, he was okay. He got over the protocol and really kind of wasn't sure about about doing it in Anaheim. We were really looking at that one, but we waited one more day for him and thought that line was real good, and obviously scored a big goal. And I thought Gus, he's the type of guy that he kind of gets in, and especially what happened in the Boston game, I was really proud to see him go out and play as hard as he did.
That's what I was going to say. Did you almost feel like you didn't want to let him linger too long once he was cleared to go because of how that last game for him ended?
Exactly. We had to get him back in there and just let him get back up and running again.
Great to see Gus back out there, and I have to admit, love that move. I mean, this is not anything against Rasmus Kapari. I think based on what we've seen so far, he's the regular guy in the middle of that 4th line. But when you think about the circumstances of Gustafsson leaving the lineup, I think it was big for him to get back in and obviously be a part of a big win. Mike's going to join us right away. Couple quick things to remind you of, folks. This is you got a couple days left to get your tickets for the ultimate 50-50 draw for the World Juniors. This is put on by Hockey Canada Coast to Coast, but the Manitoba draw is just for Manitobans. So 50% will go to a lucky Manitoban that wins the draw. 50% of the funds to grassroots hockey initiatives here in the province. Get your tickets right now. Options from a single bullet all the way up to 999 tickets at a special price. Go to hockeymanitoba.myshopify.com to get your tickets. There's also a link in the description of this video. Special happy holidays to our friends at Rolly's Transfer for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you've got a move planned in 2025, get the white glove treatment from Rolly's, family owned and operated for over 60 years and the most trusted name in the moving game. Get over to Rollies.com, check out the request an estimate feature at the top right corner. Put in the promo code WST for a special discount for moving services and moving supplies. Let them know when and where you're moving and what needs to go, and they'll turn it around with a great quote and get you booked in for that next move. Moving in 2025, make it Rollies, the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. Find out more, request an estimate today over at Rollies.com. You've also got some time for some last-minute Christmas gifts. Why don't you pop over to Manitoba Battery and get a Christmas gift that matters? You don't want your loved ones freezing their ass off outside trying to boost a car this year. Take care of them. How about a NOCO 1,000 amp booster pack for $139.50? Or a set of 25-foot booster cables for $65? Or maybe you want to treat yourself to a great deal, like that ice fishing flasher battery you need, or that sled battery that needs to be replaced. All for the best prices in the city. Get down there now. Give a gift that matters this Christmas with Manitoba Battery. ManitobaBattery.com. 2 locations to serve you. And hey, if you are thinking about that last-minute Christmas gift for the guy on your list, don't sleep on F Apparel. Special deal right now up until tomorrow. A 15% bonus on any gift card purchase over $100. So it's free money. Who doesn't want to say yes to that? And of course, you'll be able to use that on the best in men's custom clothing, suits, custom shirts, accessories. They've got it all. Big Boxing Day sale coming up right now. But in the meantime, grab those gift cards before Christmas. 15% bonus on any gift card of $100 or more. You can do it online at that's EPHapparel.com, or pop down and see him at 190 Smith Street. All right. With a holiday visit, with a very festive background, let's welcome in Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. Mike, what's going on? How are you?
I'm doing well, Huss. I have to congratulate you, by the way, on pulling out a huge fantasy football victory in the 11th place game yesterday. You avoid the absolute basement in the media fantasy football league. I believe you relegated Josh Fraseham to the 12th place finish. I hope you did better in some of your other. I know you're in other pools. I assume this was probably the worst of the bunch.
Yes, it was the worst of the bunch, Mike. And I will also remind you and everybody else that this was the final match last year. That was the 1-2 game last year. So it did not go well for me this year in our league. But I will tell you that maybe the coolest story out of all of this,
yes,
is our late great friend Ted Wyman, who passed during the season. His team is coming up big for Teddy. And and Ted is actually in the finals of the league against Hammer. And needless to say, we don't need another reason to cheer against Hammer, but I can tell you that everyone is going to be really pulling for Ted. And I think the money from our league this year is going to be going to a really good cause in Ted's name.
You wouldn't have been winning any of it if there was.
No.
It just shows how quickly one can go from the penthouse to the poorhouse. You and Josh are living proof of that. But yeah, I suspect even Jeff, knowing Jeff, he's probably cheering for Ted's team as well in the final. But yeah,
bench all his players.
Yeah. I'm in one other fantasy football league, and I'm actually in the there's 12 of us, and I'm in the final 4 in the semifinal. I need a massive night tonight from the Green Bay Packers defense and Mr. Jacobs, the running back. And the guy I'm playing has Jordan Love. So I need the Packers to come up big offensively as well, but it has to be all driven by the running back, not the quarterback.
Good luck with that.
Good luck
with that, Mike. This does not seem like a very good path to victory.
No.
Well, the path to victory was pretty clear for the Winnipeg Jets. get out there, drop the puck, and get after the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished from top to bottom. A second consecutive season sweep of the Wild, who have not beaten the Jets in 2 seasons. Jacob Middleton finishes the season as the only Wild player to score on the Winnipeg Jets. And the Jets doing what they set out to do at the beginning of the game, and the Wild now really sort of hitting the skids for the first extended period over the course of the year. Pretty nice way to go into Christmas, but as we'll talk about, not done yet because we got a game this afternoon, which is why we're talking this early in the day.
By the way, does anybody know, Huss? I've been asked. I don't know the answer. Anyone know why there's a Monday 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in Toronto? Like, it's not a stat holiday. Why are they playing today?
Well, I think it is probably taking advantage of the calendar. Now this, I could see this maybe being their next gen game, you know, when they have the kids do everything. I would almost expect that. But I'll tell you what, I also have a feeling, and I'm hoping, this is my positive spin on this, I'm hoping that this is going to affect the home team more than the road team. But if you don't think that these guys have their bags packed already and reservations with their buddies made later on tonight in wherever they're ending up, you are kidding yourselves. This is the ultimate getaway day, if you will, with this early game. So I'm sure that maybe has a little bit to it as well, Mike.
Well, and I know for a fact there's a bunch of Jets players that actually are not complaining about the schedule, because think of it, Huss, like the holiday break is very short. Like, the players got to be back in Winnipeg to practice on the 27th, which means they probably have to travel on Boxing Day. So they only get a couple days home. But think of all the Ontario guys and the Michigan guys. They're probably going to be in their family homes, like with parents or whatever, by this evening because of where the season is ending. I'll say one thing. I bet that charter that's coming home from Toronto tonight, the Jets charter, is going to be almost completely empty. Like, there'll be some staff members, I guess coaching staff, and maybe a handful of players. I suspect there's a lot of Jets players that are staying in Toronto and then going to wherever they're going for their short holiday break. But you're right. Like, I wrote in our warm-up newsletter with Kenny and I today, just my take on the game today. And I said, I have no idea what to expect. Like, think of how we are, right? When we know, the holidays are coming and maybe our productivity might take a bit of a dip. There's distractions. And look, hockey players, they're paid big money. They're professionals, but they're also human beings. So I have no idea what to expect out of this game. Like you said, at least the road team, like they've traveled. The mindset kind of is hockey. If you're the Leafs, like, you got up this morning, you've got significant others, you've got kids, you've got family in from out of town. Like, it's chaos, I suspect. So yeah, I have no idea what this game could look like. It could be the sloppiest, most exciting, crazy back and forth game. It could be an absolute snoozer. I have no idea, but I do know the Jets are coming off, as you pointed out, Huss, a really nice outing against the Minnesota Wild. They kind of righted some wrongs of that California trip, specifically how they were starting those games where they just kind of tiptoeing into them. The Jets kind of came out, exerted their will early and often, and you'd like to see that continue, because that is when the Jets are at their best. That is when they are, as Scott Arniel puts it, playing Winnipeg Jet hockey.
Well, and listen, from a Jets side, we talked about how the Wild haven't beaten the Jets in forever. The Jets haven't beaten the Leafs forever. And as we all remember from a famous clip from the dressing room, it's not just any game for a lot of players when they go up against the Leafs, especially playing in Toronto.
What was the exact quote? There's nothing like beating the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Is there anything better than beating the Leafs?
Well, the Jets have not beat the Leafs since Mark Scheifele, and he was asked actually about that yesterday, which was funny. And he said, "Look, I wasn't trying to put a curse on us." He said, I was just kind of talked about childhood team growing up in Ontario, and kind of in the moment, that's how he was feeling. But yeah, you don't need to remind him or his teammates that times have been tough. And, you know, of course, the Jets don't see the Leafs as often as they see like the Wild. You know, maybe the Jets will get to see the Leafs for an extended batch of hockey coming up later. You never know.
You want to talk about asking for things for Christmas? Sign me up for that possibility, Mike.
And if that's the case, it would behoove the Jets to try and slay the dragon today, Huss, just so that's not in their head, that they simply, there it is. Yeah. That was a great game, by the way. Just for folks, that was the day, right? With the West final had been earlier that afternoon. And
I believe so. Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, it was, that was as lively as I mean, the rinks, there's been great times at the rink, of course. And of course, great games against the Leafs, right? Who can remember Patrick Laine and the famous Bayak call, where Patrick Laine, the hat trick in overtime. So the Jets and the Leafs, and I can think of a couple games they've had. One of my favorite Paul Maurice quotes, Huss, was from quite a few years ago where the Jets played in Toronto. I was on that trip, and I believe he described the game as a what was it? A fecal free-for-all?
Yeah, something like that. He was trying to politely say shit show.
Right, and it was because he basically said there was no defense being played. It was all just run and gun hockey that coaches hate, fans love. So, you know, obviously, like the Leafs, I don't think Austin Matthews is playing today, right? So, they are obviously missing a key piece. But yeah, I'm sure if you're the Jets, you want to kind of finish this pre-holiday portion of your schedule out strong. You've been, you know, you have a chance, Huss, and who would have predicted they have a chance to get to 25 wins and pass the 50-point mark by Christmas. Like that is incredible. And we'll see if they can do it today. Standing in their way is, like you said, a team that they've had some trouble with lately.
Hey, you just mentioned Austin Matthews won't be playing today. Just as an aside, you know who else isn't playing today? Chris Kreider, healthy scratched by the New York Rangers in a massive rivalry game between the Rangers and the Devils. Kreider is out. It is, I mean, there's, you know, as much as I did kind of chuckle at how rattled people seem to be after, you know, an underwhelming performance against the Ducks on the second end of back-to-backs here in our chat. Like, there are some serious fires around the National Hockey League right now. I mean, there's nothing like what's going on in Buffalo, but the Rangers aren't far off right now, Mike.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's the smoldering inferno of whatever the heck is happening in Vancouver with JT Miller and Elias Paterson. You got the Nashville Predators. Like, yeah, there is no shortage of panic situations, but that is the nuclear option right there that Coach Peter Laviolette is pushing. And you know, the Rangers, they won, they snapped their losing streak the other day, but then they come back out and, you know, just kind of have a go through the motions loss to follow that up. So their win streak ends at 1. And yeah, this is a team that they won the President's Trophy last year, Huss. Like they are not supposed to be outside the playoff picture at Christmas. It's, you know, of all the surprising developments this season, that's right up there. But yeah, I'm not sure where that, you know, bench healthy scratch, one of your star players, one of your highest paid players, where that is on the coach's handbook in terms of panic moves, but it's got to be near the bottom of the list. And if this doesn't work, if you don't get the response, where do you go from here? Might be the coach's last stand.
Well, I mean, yeah, Lav's probably feeling a lot of heat right now. Although it sounds like Chris Drury is as well with some of the way that he's handled things. It is just a mess. And listen, they did break their losing streak. Kinda. Shesterkin did. Shesterkin stood on his head, made 41 saves, and they were able to beat Dallas in a game that, by all accounts, they didn't have much business winning. And then right back to business as usual, which for the Rangers is taking losses.
I think I saw the deserve to win meter for that win in Dallas, Huss, and I believe that it was 91% for Dallas, 9% for the Rangers. So, yeah, they got the 2 points, but I wouldn't say they cured what is ailing them. I mean, their goaltender did, but and we've seen that before in this market, right? We know what an elite goaltender can kind of mask some warts, but yeah, tough times. It's actually tough times. You look at all the teams in New York State right now. The Islanders aren't exactly flying high either. We know what's going on with the Sabres, 13 straight losses, and the Rangers. I mean, the Devils, which are kind of part of that area, but they're in New Jersey. They're having a grand old time compared to what's going on. And then throw in the Jets and the Giants. This is a tough time to be a sports fan. Oh, and you lost Juan Soto, by the way, although you lost him to the Mets. So I guess that kind of balances out. But yeah, I've always enjoyed reading the tabloid sports pages like the New York Post, and they must just be having a field day right now with everything that is going on in that market.
Well, and just quickly on Vancouver, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about it, but is that just not giving you crazy Winnipeg Jets 2019 vibes?
Well, I said that to a family member yesterday. Like, it really is, and except it's in a much more public way. Like, we were, certainly you heard the whispers behind the scenes in 2019, and it's almost like is Elias Paterson, is he the Patrick Laine, and is JT Miller the Blake Wheeler? And it's obviously not exactly the same situation, but it's clear that there is some serious dysfunction. And, couple that with the way that the Canucks PR and the players themselves, like, I know a lot of people are firing darts at the media for bringing this up. I think some context is important. If for those who didn't see it, literally the head coach of the team chided the media the other day for not asking about it. He basically lit the match and said, you guys should be asking for these players and asking them about this. And then, it's a bit like damned if you do, damned if you don't. Then when the media asks about it and Miller and Paterson kind of fire back, of course, some people want to shoot the messenger. It was the head coach that said, go and do this, which tells you that Rick Tocchet has had enough of this sort of high school drama that's playing out in his room. And, it's entertaining as heck for sure, but it's also pretty dysfunctional. So, yeah, there's a lot of dysfunction going around the league right now. I would say here in Winnipeg, it's more about function than dysfunction for the Jets.
Yeah, I know. And now, we've got the I did see some people saying, the Jets should go and get Elias Paterson, should sell the farm for him. Listen, would I love to have Elias in the Jet uniform? Absolutely. I think it's important to consider what Vancouver would be asking for a star player. Like, you're not getting that for a pick in Logan Stanley. I'll just tell you. I will tell you that. Back to this game tonight, and really, and then the Jets so far. Pionk scored. Actually, had 2 points on the night. We've spent a lot of time talking about the third pairing, but man, Mike, when you think about the second half of last season, Pionk's struggles were significant to the point where people were wondering whether the team would potentially move on from him in some way after the year.
Right.
His bounce back this year, I think, has been something I think we talked about in the first 10 games because he had that red hot start and obviously the team was winning. But, for a guy that's really popular in the room, that does a lot for the Jets, he is one of the few guys that really plays with that bite to his game. How significant do you think is Pionk's individual bounce back this year manifesting itself within the success of the team?
Oh, it's been enormous because you look at how the Jets have tried to incorporate their style of play, right? They talk about it all the time, coming in waves, 5-man units. Obviously, Josh Morrissey is a huge part of that, but it can't just be one defenseman. You need to have other layers, right? And Neil Pionk has become a very important second layer on the blue line. and his numbers support that. You look at, he's certainly on track to smash career highs. Very timely for him being in a contract year. No doubt his agent is very excited about that development. But, we know Neil Pionk had a really tough emotional year last year. The death of his best friend, Adam Johnson, battling through some injury issues. And so, he needed that clean slate more than anybody this year, Huss. And, he's, for the most part, done wonders with it. Now, there's been some stumbles, and I think this is really important to point out. This is what you love to see. Look at his game the other night and how that game in Anaheim ended. Obviously, a very costly turnover, a real tough decision on what he does with that puck. If he just reverses it or goes off the glass or whatever, like the Jets likely get at least a point out of that game. Maybe they go on. We know how they play in overtime. There's a good chance they get 2. Said they get none. So that is a tough play. No doubt that was a long flight home for Neil Pionk, especially that flight from Southern California must have felt like an eternity. But then to come out the next game and have a real productive outing against a division rival, that's what you want to see. Like, that is the ultimate bounce back. And that's a sign of a player who his game is in a really good place. And I think more importantly for Neil Pionk, his head's in a great place. And I think that's why his game has translated so well. Last year was a real tough year on a personal level, certainly on a professional level. This year, it's been a real different story, and that's great news for the Jets.
Yeah, I think the last 2 games, I think, is a great, kind of example of the way that he's, pushed through tough times. And, I've really liked his game so far, and I thought he was great on Saturday night. SK, thank you very much for those gifted memberships to WSTers in the chat. Very nice of you. And T-Kona Polly, our guy, very nice super chat. Thanks, T-Kona. Merry Christmas. It's the next gen game. In other words, brainwashing all those poor Toronto kids. Yes, indeed. And Julian makes a good point. The Amazon Prime game in Vancouver later tonight may have something to do with it. It may be an agreement there can't be a competing game in Canada at the same time. I'm not sure. I think the Jets did play on a Monday night, which was just a TSN game and not an Amazon game. But regardless, this is going to be an interesting game this afternoon, because I think we're very much wondering what we're going to see. I'll tell you what, though, Mike, and I will go back in the history books for this one to when we were much younger than we are now. You will recall in the Jet 1.0 era, the annual Boxing Day game between Winnipeg and Minnesota, which was consistently the worst game of the season. Like the guy, I'll use an old Nate Schmidt line. The players were sweating out gravy on the ice.
And cranberry sauce.
And cranberry sauce. That was always on where they traveled the day of the game. They'd basically just show up there and play it. And, I mean, there were some ugly performances. But I'll tell you what, I mean, back to the Jets tonight. We mentioned, their recent history against the Leafs, not having much success of it. The fact that I'm sure there'll be lots of friends and family there for the game. This is an opportunity for the Jets to build on an already incredibly successful pre-Christmas part of the season and go in for both the team and their fans on about a big of a high as you'd see.
Yeah, and if you're the Jets, I think you love a lot of what happened last game. Another big step for sure, Huss, and we talk about, bounce backs and whatever. Nikolai Ehlers, like he adds a dynamic to the Jets clearly that they missed when he wasn't in the lineup. And then we saw his return in Anaheim. Nikolai Ehlers, you got to love how candid he can be, right? Nobody is harder on Nikolai Ehlers than Nikolai Ehlers. And, he didn't like his game at all in Anaheim. His coach, kind of just summed it up, said, I saw a player that was rusty. He didn't look nearly as rusty on Saturday night, scores that really nice power play goal that gets the Jets going, gets an assist later in the game. And, I think not only just as important as it is to get Nikolai Ehlers going, the spinoff effect, and you talked about this, Cole Perfetti, Vlad Nemestikov, getting a second line that can add some secondary scoring. And, that was a big step for the Jets. The hope, of course, is that And I guess we'll see, because Ehlers and Lowry, they didn't skate yesterday. And I see Scott Arniel told Mitch Clinton about an hour ago that we'll see in the warm-up about the players that didn't play. Hopefully there hasn't been any kind of a setback, and Lowry and Ehlers are both good to go today. But assuming that the injury now is behind him, that's real important for the Jets, because you don't want to just rely on the Scheifele line, as good as they've been, to be your primary scoring line every night. So if the Jets can get 2 scoring lines going, they're in much better shape for sure.
No doubt about it. Mike, what's up for the holidays for you? Home with the Piper and the fam for the next few days, and then I guess we got the Sens in on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's nice. After today, I don't know if folks realize the Jets play 11 of their next 12 games at home after today. That's some extended home cooking. So yeah, I don't have any travel until mid-January, when I head to Utah and Denver for that 2-gamer in mid-January. Lots of family time. We just had a McIntyre family gathering yesterday, just on my dad's side, Huss. 37 family members.
How many scraps?
Hey, this isn't Saskatchewan, where dads and sons fight each other.
Did you see that?
I did see that.
What a bunch of mental cases. Like, come on.
Unbelievable. And of course,
for folks that are wondering what we're talking about, I think Chicklets tweeted out a clip from looked like a senior game in Saskatchewan of 2 guys beating the hell out of each other, and it turned out it was a father and son going at it. Here it is. Remis got it, and these guys are not holding back either.
What is it? I think the age is it 47 and 27, I think? And just absolutely bananas. I can't imagine what Christmas dinner is going to be like at their place. What does Mom think about all that?
Yeah, Mom was probably banging on the glass, going nuts.
They may be going straight to their room with no dessert this Christmas. But lots of family gatherings, lots of great quality time, and looking forward to a nice little break here before we get back at it. I guess starting on Saturday with the start of a real long stretch of home cooking at Canada Life Center.
Well, listen, we'll try and catch up, I guess, right back at it next week. They've got the Christmas Eve game here, or New Year's Eve game here against the Preds on the 30th, and then back-to-back, they're playing to New Year's Eve on against the Avalanche on the 31st. So we will look forward to talking with you one more time in 2024. But, Mike, in the meantime, Merry Christmas to you and yours. Have a great holiday, and enjoy the game this afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays to you, Remo, and all the listeners out there and viewers. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much. There's Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. We're going to head out to TO in just a second and check in with their pal Nick Alberga on today's game. But hey, a big happy holidays, and thank you to our friends at Princess Auto for their great support throughout the year. Still time to get down to Princess Auto for a gift card or some last-minute craft ideas, where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete those projects on your list or start something new for 2025 is at Princess Auto, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, Brandon, or shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Got to give a shout out to Scott Westman, who has sent me a tweet on the weekend, said, Huss, you got me. Santa needs a gift for himself as well. And he went down to the Manitoba Liquor Marts and grabbed one of the remaining bottles of that Canadian Club Classic 18-year-old high proof. If you're popping by the LC before, grab some of it for the whiskey lover on your list or for entertaining or enjoying. It is the one-time only release, the second issue of the Invitation series, and it offers the well-balanced taste of Canadian Club Classic, carefully aged and bottled at a higher proof for a full-body tasting experience, the first ever 18-year-old whiskey from Canadian Club. And, of course, it just won gold at the 2024 International Wine and Spirit Competition. Get it before it's gone at your local Manitoba Liquor Mart. And a big happy holidays to our friends at Wallace & Wallace, the fencing and overhead door specialists in town since 1946. If you've got fencing needs, you need a new overhead garage door for your home that'll match it perfectly and add value to it, Wallace & Wallace is the place to go. 452-2700. Their team will be happy to arrange a time to come down in the new year and give you a free estimate. You can also pop by and see them on Lawson Crescent, just off of Kenniston, or check out their site, wallacefences.com or wallacedoors.com. And just before we bring in Nick, don't forget 2 great games still over the holidays. And actually, I guess the Jan 2nd and Jan 4, lots of home games coming up right now. So you can still jump on tickets for stocking stuffers and more, or pop by Jets Gear. They've got that great deal, $109, 2 tickets and a toque for 6 select games coming up in the second half of the season. But our focus is going to be on TO this afternoon, 1 p.m., Jets and Leafs. And who better to talk about the Leafs than the Nation Network's Nick Alberga, a.k.a. the Golden Muzzy. Nick, what's up? Best of the season to you, my man. How's it going?
Same old, getting prepared for this next gen game. I'm very curious to see what transpires. As you guys know, out in that market, the Leafs have had Winnipeg's number the last little while. But again, you got a red hot Winnipeg team coming off a shutout victory where they just pasted a rival, and you have a Maple Leafs team that's sort of wounded right now without the services of Austin Matthews. Excuse me, I should say. Jeez.
the one thing, yeah. We were kind of kicking this around. I mean, I guess from a visitor standpoint, nice you don't have to deal with Matthews, but the one thing that I think we can say about the Leafs is that they have actually played some of their best hockey this year without the services of Austin Matthews.
Yeah, that's the polarizing story in this market, right? Like on one hand, you're like, wow, you're without a guy who scored 69 goals last year. But on the other, you're without a guy and you're 7-3 without his services this year, and like 20 games over 500 all time without Austin Matthews in the lineup. Like it really is incredible. I think the buy-in actually has been even more impressive without this guy in the lineup. So I would look at the likes of obviously Willie Nylander's had a really good year, Mitch Marner, John Tavares. I think if you talk about teams in position to be able to have less of a blow missing such a superstar, maybe it's the Maple Leafs because they have so many guys who can do it. But it should be intriguing to see how they come out after they were sort of flat against the Islanders on Saturday night.
Am I looking at this right? I'm pulling up DFO, and is David Kampf now going to be in the middle of Nyes and Nylander as the 1C tonight?
So the big reason why that's happening this afternoon is because the third line with Bob McMahon, Max Domi, and Nick Robertson have been on complete fire, so they don't want to split them up. So the next man up was David Kampf. Fraser Minton's a guy who's had a sniff at the NHL level, but they want to be careful and make sure he gets the right seasoning at the AHL level. So that's why you're seeing David Kampf. That is not an issue. It's not a problem. It's real. David Kampf is the 1C right now, man.
Now, let's talk about goaltending for the Leafs. I mean, that has been a common theme over the last number of years, and I'm not sure. Well, you tell me what your preseason expectations were for the goaltending, what they have received from Stolarz and Woll, and how they can get through this next 4 to 6 weeks without Stolarz, who's had an awesome season for his first in blue.
He has. And firstly, I would say clearly they've exceeded expectations, at least in my world. Having said that, I was a believer in the Craig Berube system, like show me a good goalie, show me a good system, and vice versa. And I think we've seen that throughout the first 40 some odd games, not there yet, but close to it. I think, it'll be a bit of mix and match. Like Joseph Woll starting today. Matt Murray started on Friday against the Buffalo Sabres. I think we'll see Murray bits and pieces over the next little while. Dennis Hildeby is a youngster who they have a lot of faith in, who's 23, who's going to make some starts. But I think it's such an important time for a guy like Joseph Woll because this guy hasn't been able to stay healthy in his early young career here. I mean, there's no secret he's got the talent, but can he stay on the ice? And so it's going to be a big moment because he's got to be the number one guy. But then there's always that part in the back, I think, of Toronto's minds where it's like he can't stay healthy. He wasn't ready for game one of the season. So you have to be very, very careful with the insulation. That's why I think we're going to see more than a couple guys here. Matt Murray, the veteran, is in the mix too. But yeah, in general, it's been a revelation. I think a lot of it's to do with Craig Berube's system, but Anthony Stolarz has been so spectacular. It was just so unfortunate us to see him go down because of how good he was playing, where we're even talking about him being potentially involved in the Vezina conversation, which we all know right now who the front runner is far and away, Connor Hellebuck, of course. But just to be in that same breath, in that same vein, is pretty impressive for a guy they got for $2.5 million per season in the offseason.
Well, no, for sure. I mean, that's as well money spent in the league this year, I think, so far, and especially considering, what they have, allotted to, the big four up front. You need guys to come in on more affordable contracts and exceed expectations, and that's exactly what's happened. How long had it been since Matt Murray had played an NHL game before the weekend?
It was like 600 plus some odd days. Like it was 638 between victories. Like, isn't that like, I like those stories. I didn't think it was actually good in that game. He was pedestrian, to say it mildly, but I think just see the body of work to get back, I thought was really, really cool. And I think it was actually the right decision to call him up. Like if you have a guy for insurance purposes who's won 2 Stanley Cups, granted another guy who can't stay healthy, then you have to call him up, which they did. And at the end of the day, they got the 2 points, pardon the cliche. But I thought he was just okay. But I think it's such a cool story considering how long it had been since we've seen him in an NHL game.
Hey, let me ask you about Tavares. If this is the last year of his deal?
It is. Contract year.
Yeah. And listen, I mean, he's basically a point a game player still. You probably lean on him even more with Matthews out right now. What's the future for Tavares with the Leafs? The likelihood that he re-signs, and what's the number if he does?
Well, that's the big question we're having on a daily basis on Leafs Morning Take, because I think you're so right. John Tavares, first and foremost, I don't think there's any correlation between JT dropping the captaincy and the season he's putting together. I mean, you can make the case for a variety of different Winnipeg Jets. Mark Scheifele right away came to mind, where it's like every year there's that level of consistency year in and year out offensively. And I think this is just what John Tavares has been throughout his career. And I think it was just very premature to count him out in his career. I mean, he's still 34 years old, still has the offensive acumen, never has been the fleetest of foot, but he works so hard at his craft. And that's why I didn't discount what John Tavares is going to bring to the table this season. But I think moving forward, I think there's a strong likelihood, just because the player obviously is from these parts, loves being a Maple Leaf. His dream was to be a Maple Leaf, wants to win in Toronto. He's got his wife here, his family settled. I just think it's very, very likely he signs an extension, probably a 3-year contract. I think the AAV is going to be interesting, because if we were to have this conversation entering the season, people are like, oh, he's going to take a haircut, $4 or $5 million per season. I don't see that. I think we're looking around $7.5 million, just more so on production and what he's put together so far this season.
I mean, he has been very well compensated coming over as a big time UFA, and I think we'll probably see, how long does he want the deal to be, what will work, because I'm with you. I don't think there's really a chance we see him elsewhere. As long as the Leafs want him, they'll figure out a way to get it done. And I think it'll probably come across as a much more team-friendly deal than most of the other ones that the Leafs have signed. Speaking of the deals that they've signed, I look at OEL seems to have had a real bit of a career resurgence. But is Tanev the guy that, has quietly been the biggest addition in the offseason?
Without question. Like we have this debate on a daily basis. Morgan Rielly makes the most in the back end, but who's the number one defenseman? It has to be Tanev. Just the intangibles that he brings to the table. And this is not so much a conversation, Huss, about the regular season. It's more about the playoffs and the block shots and the style and the grit and the sandpaper. Like there's just so many moving parts to Chris Tanev's game. And while it's always scary, every game he goes down that tunnel and it's like, is he going to come back? It just shows like, that this guy's going to keep fighting. And I think he's just, to your point, has been a great story. I mean, down the road, we'll see. I think term was always a conversation with this contract, but early returns have been really good. I think the fascinating part about Tanev's entrance into Toronto is the fact that he hasn't really played with Morgan Rielly. Like that's been the topic du jour in this city for years now, is like, Morgan Rielly needs a partner, and he really hasn't found a partner in his tenure, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be Chris Tanev either, but he has been so vital to bringing everything together on the back end for this team.
Just getting away from the Leafs and Jets for a minute. You guys aren't too far away from Buffalo. What do you make of what's going on with the Sabres right now? I mean, it's like This would be bad in a vacuum anywhere in the NHL. But when you consider what that incredible fan base has been through for more than a decade, this is one of the, to me, most disastrous situations we've seen in the National Hockey League, like in 15 years.
Groundhog Day. That's the best way I would describe the Buffalo Sabres. In fact, I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago. I was at the Leafs game, and Donnie Granato, who coached the Sabres the last couple of years, was canned. Of course, had a long conversation with him about just the frustration, just as a fan of the NHL, to see a market like Buffalo do well again. I think it would be so great for the league, right? Like we see right now in the NFL with the Buffalo Bills and all the success they've been having. Same ownership, by the way, but for some reason. And obviously, you recall, just like I do, back in the heyday of the Buffalo Sabres under Lindy Ruff 1.0, where they were a competitive team. They would go to conference finals. They would be, in Stanley Cup finals, albeit you hate to bring that up with the whole Brett Hull thing, but like they're not even sniffing the playoffs. That's the concern for me. And I think you look on paper, there's been so many stops and starts. Like, how many GMs are you going to fire? How many coaches are you going to fire? Like, is it going to be Kevin Adams? Is it going to be, Lindy Ruff again? Are you going to make a blockbuster trade? Like, I think the big thing with Buffalo, like they have a bright future in that crease right now, obviously with Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Devin Levi, and to their credit have been pretty decent. But it just seems like once a game they have like a bonehead mistake that just ultimately costs them the game, because they have some pretty decent players on that roster. But in my opinion, at least, I think they're too analytics driven, where you look at their blue line, you look at every guy is the same type of player. And, shifting the conversation to like the Leafs, I think you need that sandpaper and grit, that fight that you need in a blue line. Look at Winnipeg. They got some, stalwarts, on that blue line. Like, you need guys who are going to go through the trenches. And I look at that Buffalo blue line specifically. Are they difficult to play against is my question on a nightly basis. They're not.
Well, the answer to that is a resounding no. And
exactly.
Like the thing is, this is the rebuilt team. Like they've gone through, like, remember when they were tanking for McDavid?
Yeah.
This is still that four. They've had 2 number 1 overall picks. I just feel sick for those fans. And thank God for them that the Bills are where they are right now, because that is, an area of North America that supports their teams so loyally. And it is sort of crazy that the Pujols are overseeing 2 operations. One, as exciting and dangerous and championship caliber as any in the league, and then the Sabres are the Sabres. I'm not sure if you caught this, but Kreider, healthy scratch today by the Rangers. This scene in New York is so wild in that, Trouba was sort of the guy that was kind of sounded like a bit of the scapegoat at the beginning. Mm-hmm. But like the way that they handled that with their captain threatening waivers, they did that to Barclay Goodrow before. Like, it seems like it's manifested itself in a very negative way within the organization. And then on the other side of it, Nick, like, don't think that other players and agents haven't been watching what's happened over the last number of months. And I really wonder what the long-term effect of this is, because this has always been a spot where everyone seemingly wants to go and play. I do wonder whether guys will have second thoughts on going to the Big Apple based on what a mess this is and the way Chris Drury's conducted business.
It's funny, I had a conversation with a colleague like a month and a half ago, and I'm like, how's site traffic going right now? And he's like, not great. There hasn't been any drama. And like, you flash forward a month and a half later between, I think the Rangers and Vancouver are competing with each other for most drama right now. Like, it's an absolute show in both those markets. With the Rangers specifically, I think it's so easy to lose sight of the fact that they were 2 wins away from going to a Stanley Cup final last year. Like, talk about a fall from grace with that roster. I think there's obviously been a couple layers to that story. Obviously, the Trouba one, like, I think it's a weird feeling for anybody in life when you're not wanted by your employer, yet you're still there. The Goodrow situation, I think humanizing situations specifically on Broadway is important in this aspect, where it's like, I think they just rocked the boat a bit too much. Like, imagine if you're that team knowing that you were so close to a cup final and the GM wants to, make waves with your roster, right? And then on top of that, the whole Igor Shesterkin conversation from entering the season finally gets his extension. I think that weighs and gets louder as the year goes on, especially for a guy of the ilk of an Igor Shesterkin. So you add that all together, and then compound with the fact that nobody's really playing well outside of like Will Cooley. Like, you can handpick a couple of these guys that are doing well. Now they trade Capo Caco last week. Like, they're an utter disaster. And I don't know about you, it just feels like we're going to have this conversation in the next month where, hey, should the Rangers reacquire JT Miller, right? He was a former New York Ranger that went to Tampa way back in the day. And it just seems like Vancouver and the New York Rangers are perfect in terms of trade partners with some of the assets they have. Because I think Chris Kreider's a guy who's going to go between now and the deadline. I think Vancouver's got to make a decision. Is it going to be Paterson? Is it going to be JT Miller? But it just seems like they're likely candidates to make a trade with each other.
What a brutal decision for Vancouver to seemingly be forced into if they do.
Yeah.
I mean, you finally get, like, every single team in the league is looking for quality elite depth down the middle. And they've got two guys that are absolute studs. And because they can't get along with each other, you're going to have to move one. Like, I have, we're kicking around here. Obviously, a lot of Jet fans are imagining what this roster would look like if you could slide Paterson in there. And I mean, it would be phenomenal to have that. I mean, it's the one area where the Jets, I think, could really improve. A second line center, and maybe one defenseman to play in the top four. Not easy to get. But you think about, well, what would it take to get a guy like that out of there? And then the more you wrap your head around options, if they really are forced to it, it is so hard to win that trade. And this is a team that actually certainly should be a playoff team, and I think should, on paper at least, be a tough out for some of the top teams in the Pacific. And it seems like they're getting eaten from within.
Yeah, and you talk about dealing from a position of strength, certainly can have that conversation. But when everybody in the league knows your dirty laundry the way we do in the league right now, it's going to be difficult to get pennies on the dollar, whether it's Paterson or whether it's a Miller. I posed that question on X last night, who you keeping, Miller or Paterson? And the responses were split. But like, I'm inclined to say the 26-year-old Paterson, but I won't lie, it concerns me the way it's tough to get that guy going and like getting up to play hockey games, which again, you look at JT Miller, you want a dog in the fight in the Stanley Cup playoffs, like he'll go through a wall for you. So it's like, what way do I pick? And I think you're so right. I think it even dates back to the extension, $11.5 million a season they gave to Elias Paterson. And since signing that contract, he has been absolutely dreadful. And I'm just very curious to see how they act upon this, because it's getting louder and louder and louder. There's frustration brewing. They're losing hockey games. And it's a far cry from last year where like they were the NHL's darlings. Rick Tocchet did a great job. They were a sleeper team, got into the playoffs, made some noise. And we haven't even talked about Thatcher Demko, right? Like this guy's finally back in the mix. Their number one goalie. They've been very mum on that conversation all season long. It's exactly what you didn't want in a market like Vancouver. But I think you're right with Winnipeg. In general, I'm intrigued to see where they go the trade route. It's not talked about enough how great a job Scott Arniel has done this year, how great Hellebuck's been, how tight-knit that team is. For everything Vancouver isn't, the Winnipeg Jets are right now, and the way they play the game and the consistency and the physicality, they're fun to watch. And, of course, as you know, with a point today, they can become the first team to 50 points this season. So I think that's what they'll look to address is up the middle between now and the deadline. We
were also giving some Christmas gifts out earlier today, and Davis Payne, who's come in and taken over the power play. I mean, Nick, this power play is just under 32% right now. More than 2.5 points clear of or just barely 2.5 clear of New Jersey at number 2. And they were in the bottom 7-8 of the league last year. And it was a real Achilles heel. Rick Bowness came on our show and said, listen, if our power play was league average, we win the President's Trophy last year. And obviously not having that power play was a big factor in the postseason as well. And there are some similarities between the Leafs and the Jets in this way. Very talented teams. They've had some good regular seasons. Both will be measured by how they do in the playoffs. Can the Jets get past a team like Dallas? Can they get past a team like Colorado? And we'll presumably find that out. Same thing for the Leafs. And listen, they, like the Jets, are in a very tough neighborhood. I'd say the division maybe is a little softer this year with, I think, some regression in Boston. Tampa's still dangerous. But with Craig Berube, with Tanev as presently matched right now, how much more optimistic are you that they can go toe-to-toe with the likes of the Florida Panthers, who to me, not only in that division, but in the league, are the measuring stick for everything that you need to have to win in the postseason?
I would say cautiously optimistic. Now, I'll just come out and say it. As currently constructed, I think Florida's a way better team. They ragdolled the Leafs a couple weeks ago. Granted, a couple of the big boys weren't in the lineup, so it's tough to measure. But on paper, I just like Florida's composition. They're just a really, really good team. I think aside from them, I think the Leafs are there with everybody else in the league. There's always cautious optimism because we've seen this song and dance. Having said that, it is a process defensively outside of the last couple games. This team has been locked in for the majority of the season, and the process has been fun to watch. Just the attention to detail, the buy-in, how they play in waves, how there's consistency to their game. They're a bit more physical. The blue line's been the big story for me, aside from the crease, obviously, where I think you look at Berube's system, you look at the shot blocking, you look at the save percentages way up this season. I think this has been a big determining factor as to why the Leafs are flirting with first in the Atlantic Division right now. But ultimately, you just talked about special teams. Watch out for this today. The Maple Leafs power play has been an utter disaster, which again makes no sense. But the caveat to that is when Austin Matthews is not playing, for some reason, the power play is firing at like 25 to 30%. It makes absolutely no sense. They didn't get a power play opportunity against the Islanders over the weekend. If they do get one today, just look out for that because it makes absolutely no sense. But just like you guys, that's the story in the playoffs. Can you get a save? Can you get a goal when it matters most? Can you get a power play goal?
So now, we talked about the record. Now we're talking about the power play. Will we be tuning in to Leafs Morning Take next week with the question, is Austin Matthews the problem with the Toronto Maple Leafs?
Oh, I won't even touch that. Actually, people in our chat, they have extreme takes, and like a lot of people are like, trade Matthews. I'm like, this guy had 69 goals last year. And quite honestly, I love his brand. I love his style. I love the way he plays. And I think he has evolved greatly as a player the last couple of years where he can play that physical style. But you just never know what you're going to get on a daily basis in the chat, do you?
Hey, listen, congrats on the success with that Leafs Morning Take and everything you and our friends over at the Nation Network have going on. Enjoy this one tonight. By the way, do we know, other than the fact that most of the players on both teams are going to have the opportunity to be 6 beers deep by about 9:30 with their buddies tonight, do we have any other idea why this game is at 1 o'clock today on a Monday?
So we have like an annual next generation game in Toronto. And I think the whole idea of it was to include like the kids who are off from school. So I think you'll see a lot of kids incorporated into the broadcast. If you watch like the national feed today, maybe like a PA voice singing the anthem, calling the game, having like a guest reporter. So that's, to the best of my knowledge, this is why they do it. They have an early start time around Christmas every year. And I guess Winnipeg was the opponent this year.
Well, hey, listen, hell of a game to let the kids see. And I'm all for starting these holidays a little bit early. So we went on a little bit early today. We get the matinee game. It was great to chat with you. Listen, all the best to you and yours and the entire Nation team, Nick. Let's do this again soon. Enjoy the game today.
You as well, bud. Continued success. Take care. Happy holidays.
Thanks so much. There's Nick Alberga. Give him a follow at the Golden Muzzy. And for more on the Leafs, check out Leafs Morning Take Daily over on the Nation Network. All right. We got to get Remo back in here and get into a quick little football chat before we wrap up. But why not question of the day for not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray? I think I know what you all want for Christmas. It is a win today against the Toronto Maple Leafs. But let's get some predictions in the chat right now. And how much better would your Christmas be if the Jets can deliver 2 points today, get to 25 wins, be the first team to get to 50 points in the league? Let us know in the chat. Well, hey, you know what? We're going to be having a few beers maybe this afternoon, certainly over the holidays. Perfect time to give a big cheers to our good friends at Winnipeg's favorite local brewery, Little Brown Jug.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
3, 2, 1.
Cheers to our friends at Little Brown Jug. Hey, if you do have some last minute Christmas shopping to do, I suggest you rip down to Royal Sports. they have the most incredible selection of Jets merch and have a ton of exclusive new Jets. The messes that we're seeing around the league right now, it makes the angst in Winnipeg seem somewhat comical at times, considering the way the Jets have played and where there are real fires right now in the NHL.
It was kind of funny. I mentioned the wild lack of success lately, and Marcus Foligno says, "Hey, at least we're not Buffalo." So that's going on, and yeah, everyone's talking about what's going on in Vancouver. The players are addressing it, and it was funny because they asked what they asked like Rick Tocchet about it, and Quinn Hughes, and they were open about, yeah, these guys, there's some issue happening, and then Paterson's like after the game, you guys are making stuff up. So I don't know if they didn't tell him that the cat's out of the bag here. Like Bruce Boudreau is going on old drive saying, yeah, I knew there was an issue, and he was a coach there a couple years ago. So I'm not sure really what's going on here.
Are you going to join us back on the screen, or? I'm
having a number of
the royal backdrop, letting everyone know where to do their final. Actually, I guess I'm frozen. It looks like
you
on
were
that
not
screen.
Oh, sorry, you can't. There's
we
a
are
lot
hearing
going
it as
on.
Well.
There's a lot of issues going on over here that I'm trying to troubleshoot.
Speaking of Royal Sports, right there. What time is the show going to today? We're going to probably go about another 10 minutes or so, or maybe 15 minutes, to give me enough time to post up for that 1 o'clock puck drop this afternoon. And then maybe a trip by Royal after the game, because I will be occupied between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. watching the game. How are we? It's weird. I'm actually seeing myself fine on YouTube. I'm not sure if it's our display here within our room.
Yeah, that's an issue on my end. I'm trying to close the frozen OBS, and it's not closing, so I can't do anything.
I got it. It said I was frozen, but now I am. If that's Greg from Royal Sports, I know he's fired up. The Vikings do it again. Sammy darts, another game-winning drive. Remis, the Vikes are 13-2. The Eagles lost to the Commanders, and now if Minnesota can win their final 2 games of the season, home to Green Bay next week, it could set up a do or die, well, not a do or die, but a win and get the first seed for Minnesota. One of the great stories in the NFL this year. Detroit's been great. They were full marks. They crushed the Bears yesterday. I need the Vikings to win that game next week to set up a game where the winner would get first seed and a bye, and the loser would have to be on the road the next week in the wild card week.
Yeah, that's what you want, Hess. You don't want to have these games where that don't mean anything at the end of the year. Like a game, basically a playoff game for first place at the end of the year. That's awesome. So we want to see that. And hopefully we get it. And lucky break there for both teams with Jalen Hurts getting injured yesterday and Jaden Daniels, who seems to be healthier than earlier in the season, leading this incredible comeback again with a last-second touchdown. I didn't see a ton of that game, but what a game that was. Washington suddenly relevant again. And, Minnesota just having this incredible season with a win over Seattle, and Detroit as well, keeping it going against the Bears. So we're on a collision course here for some big Week 18 games.
Anybody in chat get screwed in their fantasy playoffs by Jalen Hurts getting hurt and taken out in the first quarter? 4 points.
Ooh.
And then that's that. That is tough. That is the nature of the unpredictability of fantasy football. So RIP to anybody that had Hurts. I think they expect Hurts to be back in the next game. But Kenny Pickett, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was the Commanders that had 5 turnovers. It was just incredible to see what Jaden Daniels did against a defense that had been eating everybody up for the better part of the last 2 months of the season. Let's get to fan feedback by Fans First. Your number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market. I know there's a lot of people clamoring for seats for the game on Saturday night. Fans First is one of the few places that you could still grab something closer to game time And of course, if that'll be the case, I'm sure for the game next Saturday against the Ottawa Senators as well. Bottom line with Fans First, it's by fans for fans and no fees. What you see is what you pay. And by far, best customer service and best spot to sell remaining or extra tickets if you need it. We've got a lot of predictions here, and I think a lot of them are quite positive for today, although we did have some fun. The system wants a 1919 or a shot of CC. Yes, that was on our little break. But we've got quite a few. 5-3 for the good guys from Jay Willer. Waiters, 27. He will remember this. He's a big Leaf guy. The first next-gen game, the Leafs won 8-6 versus Carolina in 2019. With Connor Hellebuck in net, I don't suspect scoring like that, although it would be quite fun. And Dominic the Donkey, the Italian Christmas donkey, predicts a 4-2 victory. Bridget says Jets 6-5. Should be a good one. Mary Jane, hey, Merry Christmas, Mary Jane. One of our favorites. Should be a good game today. 4-2 Jets with the win. I see Running Man with 4-2 Jets tonight. I may have to throw on a 4-2 win. Exact score on Coolbet. We'll get to those Coolbet lines later on today. I'm just wrapping up the NFL though, Reem. Huge win for the Vikes, but a devastating loss for the Seattle Seahawks. And the Rams now with that win against the New York Jets, whose season is mercifully coming to an end. The Rams now have that inside track on the NFC West. And meanwhile, the win by the Cowboys last night was devastating to Tampa because they lost both games to the Atlanta Falcons this year. And now Michael Penix, after his first start in the National Football League, and the Falcons have pole position and have their destiny in their own hands after Baker and the Bucs fell up short to the Cowboys last night.
Yeah, Cooper Rush looking competent against the Bucs yesterday on Sunday Night Football. And watch out for Atlanta. Michael Penix, he looks decent back there. He's poised. I know he threw one interception, but if you watch the game, like it slipped out of Kyle Pitts' hands and it went right to the Giants. So I know they were playing the Giants, but I think Falcons have some talent. They're going to really run heavy with Bijan Robinson, but if Penix cannot turn the ball over and make plays, I do like Atlanta. Baker had this great season for the Bucs, disappointing for them, I'm sure. And what was the other one? The Jets? Yeah, I don't want to hear about them anymore. I'm so sick of the
Aaron Rodgers too. You can go watch Enigma, his
zero
Amazon
chance.
Prime special, and let that be the last we hear from Aaron Rodgers. By the way, just finishing up the fan feedback from Fans First, by fans, for fans, no fees. I believe I'm being trolled by my friend Greg at Royal Sports, who writes, if anyone else agrees with this comment, please make comments. Andrew must have went to the same hairstylist as Mark Davis this week. They are both having great hair weeks. Well, you are right, and I think we were probably watching that Atlanta Vegas game on Monday night when Mark Davis actually did have his best hair day in a very long time. It did not look like he had personally done his own hair with a Flowbee, and does not look like he came right out of Dumb and Dumber. So big win for them. Raiders, meanwhile, they got the win and cost themselves the number 2 pick right now, falling from number 2 to number 6 on that list right now. But it was we're good. It looks like we're going to have a couple of races, NFC West and certainly the NFC South, Reem. And the Bengals, the Colts, the Dolphins still technically alive, but all on fumes. All Denver or San Diego or the Chargers have to do is get a win. Big win for Baltimore over Pittsburgh. That division is up for grabs right now. I'm kind of hoping Baltimore wins that to finish third. You don't really want to see a Ravens team, I think, in a wild card spot. And the Chiefs just keep on getting it done. 14-1 after a win over the Texans, Remis, and any Kansas City win or any Buffalo Bills loss will end up with the road to the Super Bowl once again going through Arrowhead Stadium.
Yeah, here are just a couple things. One shout to Slick McGuire for the super chat, Huss. He says, Merry Christmas. Hope you guys have a lovely break. Made it sweeter following a W against the Leafs. And Slick.
Thanks, Slick.
Slick gifting in British pounds, Huss. He's from the UK. Has no ties to Winnipeg. He's in our Discord. He became a fan of the Jets because he likes the Weaker Thans, and he likes that song, One Great City, and brought him to finding the Jets and finding our channel. So pretty
Slick, that is awesome. Thank you very much for the pounds and the comments. Great that you're involved with us. And here, a little bit of Weaker Thans trivia. Kindergarten, Brock Corden School, Andrew Paterson, John K. Sampson, classmates.
Wow.
Running in the playgrounds of Brock Corden and on the hills back in kindergarten and our early elementary age. Great guy, incredible musician.
And then shout out to Eric K. For becoming a member as well. It was funny. I was watching the Sunday Night Football last night. They're showing the playoff scenarios on the screen. It reminded me of John King on CNN doing the election. The guy's like, okay, this is the probability for this one. If this team wins, it was a whole...
Isn't it the same guy?
What?
Isn't the guy that they use for the playoff predictions the same guy that NBC uses in the election?
Oh,
their
maybe,
numbers guy? I can't remember his name offhand, but he's awesome.
Oh, I don't know about, I'm not 100%, but did remind me of that yesterday. And, Joe Burrow having a really nice season. They just can't stop anyone on defense. Don't think they're going to get. I'm still, it's so funny in baseball and NFL. I'm just wrapping my head around these new playoffs. I know it's been a couple years with the additional wild card spot. It used to be the 2 buys. Now it's the 1 buy. Baseball, there's so many more wild cards. I guess I'm just getting old these days.
We're just coming in from the decision desk. We're just coming in. Oh, we are projecting the Chiefs to win a 3rd straight Super Bowl.
Oh my God.
I can't wait.
They somehow keep winning. Again, they look at the South, like the Texans, 9-6. And that, speaking of the Chiefs, they did beat the Texans. That Tank Dell injury, horrific, with C.J. Stroud crying during the game. You don't see that too often. And yes, Miami gonna get in 7-8. They got, the Tua injury really hurt them. And I still call the Chargers the San Diego. They're not the LA Chargers.
No,
but anyways,
they're orphans, if you will. They're second-class citizens in their own building.
I did want to mention, mention the fan feedback. Mike talked about Jets Leafs classics. Shout out to the 2013 March. Zach Bogosian scores the shootout winner in the 10th round of the shootout in a 5-4 win. That's my favorite Jets Leafs memory. Sorry, I know I'm all over the place here.
The Line A game is still, I think, the one that stands out. I mean, that's an all-time game in 2.0 history, period. But I'll tell you what, we're here for new memories of Jets wins over the Leafs. It's been a minute since we've had one, so hopefully they can get one today. Let's get over to the Coolbet lines. Shout out to everyone that rode with us on the house callers. Cashed that one at just about 8-1 plus 795. We had a James Conner touchdown, Justin Jefferson touchdown, and Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jags.
Oh, big game.
So that was a beautiful one at 8-1. And tonight, the Packers 14-point favorites over the Saints in the Monday Nighter. This could be a long night for the Saints. But hopefully, best of luck to all of you that still have fantasy implications on this game. But the NHL is where we want to go today because the final day before the Christmas break and the schedule is packed. Remo, I'm going to go through these games, mentally make a note of teams that we might want to put on a 3-gamer. The Jets are plus 106. Leafs minus 125. The Bruins are slight favorites over the Capitals, which is interesting to me considering where their records are. Boston minus 128. Washington plus 109. Columbus Blue Jackets minus 135. Montreal Canadiens plus 115. The Detroit Red Wings, a slight favor over the Blues at -115. Lightning and Panthers going at it in South Florida. Florida is -154 favorites. The Battle of Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh and Philly. Pittsburgh -124 faves. The Sabres are looking to break a 13-game losing streak in New York against the Islanders. Buffalo +135. The Islanders coming off that win against the Leafs on Saturday -159. The Blackhawks are in Minnesota to take on the Wild. The struggling Wild. -222 for Minnesota. Chicago +185. Nashville is +103 at home against the Hurricanes at -122. The Dallas Stars are in Utah to take on the HC. Dallas -159, Utah +135. San Jose and the drama-laden Canucks in Vancouver. Vancouver -263. And the Vegas Golden Knights, a huge -319 favorite against Anaheim, who is +260. Any leans coming out of those games? I picked 3 games that I sort of liked, but I'm interested in where you're at, where your head's at.
I think maybe you want to lean home teams, Huss, when it's like the day before the break, teams wanting to get out of there. Are we? Is this?
I don't know. I'm thinking. My theory is that maybe the home teams are at a disadvantage. Like, for instance, in this Jets-Leafs game, like the Leafs, as I said, those guys all have their bags packed. Like, they probably have the driver waiting for them at the rink to take them to the airport or wherever they're going afterwards. I certainly hope that that is the case, at least in the Toronto-Winnipeg game. I like Columbus against the Habs. I think I'm going to go with Florida over Tampa. And you know what? I like Carolina at -122 against Nashville.
Yeah, that's fair. What about, you think Buffalo breaks the streak at +135?
I don't, actually.
but are you comfortable with Islanders at -159 favorites?
No, I'm staying away from that game entirely. What about Chicago +185 in Minnesota against the struggling Wild?
Yeah, Chicago, they've given some teams trouble this year. Minnesota's having problems scoring.
Every time we bet against the Blackhawks in the lock shop, they win. So we've suspended them for the remainder of 2024 and betting against them. I'm thinking about actually betting on them right now, considering where the Wild are right now heading into the break. But I think we'll probably leave it. I'm going to go with those 4 games. And those 3 games are Columbus, Florida, and the Hurricanes. And we'll throw that on a parlay. Now let's check these Jets odds before. We're going to have to get something on for the Jets. +106 for a win. Who do we like to score today? Kyle Connor +138. Shifley +210. Velarde +220. Ehlers +245. Perfetti +310. He's kind of hot coming off that last game. Nino Niederreiter +380. Josh Morrissey +650. Those are the Jets that we've got right now. Shifley?
Man, Morrissey's +650? That's not bad.
I know, it's a pretty big number.
Ehlers +245 seems like if Ehlers Velarde, I always like those. Wow, they really don't like the Jets to score on this. Hey, like Mark Shifley's +210 in Toronto. Okay, Ken had these stats in Winnipeg Free Press. Shifley against the Leafs in his career. Listen to these numbers. Where was it? Okay, wait, that's not... he hasn't played 29 games against the Leafs, has he? I guess so.
Yeah, he's been in the league. Not to mention there was the All-Canadian
Oh, yeah, they had the
year.
Canadian division. Yeah, so 37 points in 29 games for Shifley against the Leafs.
All right.
Does that matter?
Let's see. Yes, of course it does.
Plus 210.
+210. What about points? -165 to get a point. What about to get 2 points? +285.
It's not bad.
I'm going with that. +285 for Shifley.
Who they asked Velarde about playing Toronto, and he's like, well, I grew up in Kingston. Ottawa's more of a home game for me, if we're thinking of Ontario guys.
Yes, exactly. They just kind of assume that everyone with Ontario ties must be all
perfect.
about Toronto, when it's in fact a pretty big place. I'm gonna jump on Peters too.
He's from Whitby, Ontario. Cole Perfetti.
He is. So is Drager, I think.
Drager?
Darren Drager?
Oh, is he?
Pretty sure it's Whitby, if I'm not mistaken. That's the Drager home office. But anyways, it was we got a big slate of games today. Jump on them over at Coolbet. If you haven't played there before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus up to $200 on your first deposit. And by the way, it's cup odds right now. It's been very interesting to see the Jets. They opened at 25. They went to 20 right away. And then they basically dropped in one day from 20 to 12 to 1. And they went back to 16. And now they've settled 15 to 1 right now. Tied with the Vegas Golden Knights. Leafs 14 to 1 right now. That might not be a bad little stocking stuffer. A Jets Cup bet. Jets Cup futures.
Did you see that thing that went viral on Twitter where I guess you do that game where you bring a gift and like everyone pass it around and someone put like a parlay ticket in at like a work function. You get the rights to this parlay.
That's something that I would do, actually. So it'll be good. Anyways, get in there on that.
We just got some breaking CFL news. Actually, there was some Jets news. Simon Lundmark just got called up. I'm not sure what that's about.
Like during the show?
Yeah. Like 20 minutes ago, Jets PR tweeted out Simon Lundmark recalled from the Moose. Remember he had a great preseason?
Yeah, he was awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a corresponding move or if he's actually there. It's a paper transaction. I don't know. But
that's mysterious.
Yeah.
Especially when we were thinking that it was either going to be like Lowry and Ehlers were the two guys they were waiting to hear about today.
Yeah, and hold on. One sec. I thought we had a CFL trade. Yes, the Rough Riders just tweeted this out 8 minutes ago, Huss. They've acquired Jake Mayer from the Stampeders.
Our pal Jamie Nye was all over that at Grey Cup.
Was he?
Yep. He said Jake Mayer was going to be with the Riders next year. So he'll play behind Trevor Harris and then presumably be the guy the next year for Saskatchewan.
Ken Weeb says Simon Lundmark scratched here for insurance.
I guess with Stanley out, they'd sent Dylan Coughlin down.
Yes.
So they wanted to have an extra guy. All right, listen, we've gone a little longer than we had planned, and we've got a game in like 10 minutes. So we are going to end this stream. We are going to wish you all a wonderful holiday season and remind you that tomorrow at 1 o'clock p.m. will be the debut, the premiere, if you will. So you can have fun in the chat of our holiday special featuring Rick Bonus, Dennis Bayak, and Brent Fitz. Enjoy it over the next 3 days, and we'll be back on Friday at 1 p.m. with our regularly scheduled show in the final marble race of 2024. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all of you. Happy holidays. Remo, Happy Hanukkah to you and the fam. Hopefully you guys have a great few days off. And let's start it off with the vibes being very high with the win this afternoon. How does that sound?
Yes, let's start off with with a win. Have a nice, couple days here. Looking forward to getting back on a Friday when the Jets, take on the Senators here Saturday. So lots to talk about in terms of NFL. Hey, Christmas NFL on a Wednesday.
Oh,
Chiefs,
Steelers at
Netflix
noon.
Christmas.
Ravens, Houston later on. The Costco family bringing the boom with all the promos for it. And this is what it's all about. All right, I got to get out and watch this hockey game, folks. So have yourself a great few days. Make sure to check out the holiday special with Bones, Bayak, and Brent Fitz tomorrow throughout the next 3, and then we'll be back on Friday to fire it up, heading into the weekend with the Jets at home to the Ottawa Senators. Thanks to Mike McIntyre and Nick Alberga for jumping on today, and all of you to join us at our special early time today of 11 a.m. That is going to do it for us. Merry Christmas to you all. Happy Hanukkah, and we'll see you Friday here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.